It didn't happen at a wedding or some sentimental family gathering. There were no first dances or shared toasts, no blurry photos on the mantel later. It happened in a rented downtown Charleston theater. Red velvet seats, polished floorboards, soft-lit archways framing the stage. I paid for the lighting. I paid for the floor refinishing. I paid for the security who smiled at guests at the front doors and never learned my name. I paid for it all. The occasion was a charity gala. A night meant for elegance and goodwill. A night where money disguised itself as kindness. The invitations were printed on thick cardstock. My name wasn't on them. I stood near the wall just beside the service corridor. Not in a seat, not at a table, not even listed as a donor. I had paid for the upgraded sound system, the rental of the projection equipment, the late-night catering, the wine, the monogrammed napkins. It had all been done quietly under my name, with the understanding that it was for Emily's future. That was the phrase Kelly had used. It's for Emily's future. She said it like a spell, like something I wasn't allowed to question. I stood alone while the crowd filled in, tuxedos and ball gowns sliding past me in clouds of perfume and ego. A few nodded at me, thinking I was staff. Someone even asked where the restrooms were. Then Emily stepped on stage. She looked tall up there, taller than I remembered. Her dress shimmered under the lighting I paid extra for. The room quieted. She held the microphone with practiced grace, her voice crisp, her expression controlled. She thanked the board, the sponsors, the anonymous donors. She listed names I recognized, names I had written checks to, foundations I had corresponded with on her behalf. Not once did my name cross her lips. Then she said it, casual, clean, the final note of her speech like punctuation. And of course, she added, my real father. None of this would have been possible without him. The room erupted. Applause broke out in waves, generous and unknowing. Guests leaned in to whisper, to nod, to offer the polite kind of clapping reserved for emotional beats. The man two rows ahead of me even stood, mistaking the name for someone present in the crowd. My jaw didn't tighten. My fists didn't clench. I didn't feel heat. I felt absence. Like something in my chest opened and nothing was inside it. And that's when I saw Kelly. She was seated with the organizers' center table. Candles flickered in front of her, and her eyes were warm with pride. Not at me. Not toward the back of the theater where I stood. She didn't even look. Her lips curled into a smile, and she brought her hands together, slow, composed applause for her daughter. No confusion, no correction, no hesitation. She knew what Emily would say. She let her say it. The rest of the room clapped without question. That's the thing about these events. Everyone assumes the narrative they're given is true. No one stops to ask. No one notices the man in the back of the room who looks like he's just had the wind knocked out of him. And in that applause, I remembered things. I remembered the time Emily's old car broke down and I took out a high-interest loan to buy her a used Civic, because Kelly had said, she's commuting now, it's not safe, and you know Todd's not going to step up. I remembered the fundraiser where I stayed up until 3 a.m. adjusting the sponsorship packets while Emily and Kelly argued about centerpieces. I remembered the back-to-school seasons, the private tutoring, the test prep, the new laptop, the housing deposit when she moved for college. All paid every time by me. Quietly. Because you wouldn't say no anyway. I remembered that phrase. Kelly's favorite. Her answer to every hesitation I ever gave. You wouldn't say no anyway. And she was right. I never did. Even when I found myself paying for a vision I had no part in. Even when I was told to stay out of conversations because this is between Emily and her real dad. Even when I asked once, carefully, if it might be nice if Emily included me in the family acknowledgement section of her graduation program, and Kelly smiled. Not kindly, not cruelly, and said, she doesn't want to confuse people. Confuse people. Like I was some anomaly. Some unspoken clause in their family story. Present but parentless. A helper, not a head. I watched Emily thank the man who vanished for most of her teenage years. I remembered the stories Kelly used to tell me in the beginning. The missed birthdays, the empty weekends, the checks that bounced. The long gaps with no contact. I had stepped in when she was 13, picked her up from volleyball games, taken her to doctor's appointments, sat through school plays, paid the orthodontist, paid the counselor, paid the dentist, and now here she was, standing in front of an applauding crowd, rewriting the past in a single sentence. None of this would have been possible without him. Her real father. I don't know if he was in the room. I didn't look for him. I didn't need to. His presence had already filled the space that was supposed to be mine. And everyone, even Kelly, had agreed to it. I shifted my weight against the wall. The sound of applause faded. Emily walked off stage to a small chorus of admiration. Someone called her name. Another guest tapped their glass, preparing for the next round of donations. I stood still. That's when it became clear. I wasn't family. I was a function, a slot in the system, the man who kept the wheels turning behind the curtain, but never stepped on stage. The man who absorbed the costs so others could smile in the spotlight. I had paid for the lights, the stage, the drinks, the staff. I had fielded invoices and smoothed over delays. I had even suggested the theater when Kelly was too overwhelmed to plan the venue. And now, in the final moment, I was an empty seat. I could feel the air change inside me. This wasn't anger. Not yet. This wasn't rage or revenge. This was something deeper, older, like grief but colder. I looked around the room. They didn't see me. Even if they did, they wouldn't understand what they were seeing. To them, I was a generous supporter, a distant figure, someone's husband, maybe, a man standing alone near the wall. But I saw clearly now. This family had always been a stage, and I had been backstage the entire time. The applause faded. A new speaker took the mic. The crowd settled. But I didn't move. I watched Kelly take a sip of champagne, still smiling. She leaned in toward one of the board members and whispered something that made them laugh. She didn't look for me. Not once. I took a slow breath. That's when the decision began. Not all at once, but in pieces. A quiet reordering. A mental check of every name, every payment, every line I had ever signed. I could see it now like a ledger laid bare. All of it, every silent yes I had ever given, had led to this moment. And it was time to start saying no. I didn't walk toward the stage. I didn't interrupt the next speech or shout from the shadows like some wounded patron. I didn't grab Kelly's wrist or whisper my disappointment into her ear. No, I left all that to lesser men. Men who still needed to be seen. Instead, I stepped into the service corridor. The corridor was narrow and quiet. The kind of backstage artery where theater techs whispered, where catering staff wiped their hands on black aprons, where the real weight of the evening moved unseen. It was a relief. No velvet, no applause, just cool cement under my shoes and the hum of fluorescent bulbs. I walked past a stack of unused dinnerware and a cart of empty glasses. One of the junior coordinators passed me, too busy with a headset to offer more than a polite nod. They didn't know who I was. I didn't mind. I found the event coordinator in a small utility office, seated at a fold-out table littered with clipboards and printouts. She looked up, startled at first, but I raised a hand, calm, not confrontational. "Evening," I said quietly. "Can I speak with you a moment?" She nodded, set down her pen, and gestured for me to sit. I didn't. "I'm Michael," I said, "Kelly's husband. My name should be on the technical contracts: sound, lighting, streaming, catering upgrades, security extensions." I authorized the enhancements. Recognition settled into her features. Not shock, not reverence, just quiet understanding. "Yes, I remember. Everything above the venue minimum." "Right," I said. "I'd like you to scale the event back to the base level. Nothing disruptive. Just cut the upgrades. Remove the extras. Let the rest of the night continue under standard operations." She blinked. "Sir, the live stream is already in progress. It doesn't need to continue. But the donors, they've seen enough." She paused, her eyes scanning my face, maybe waiting for a hint of sarcasm. There was none. Only resolve. A slow understanding passed between us, that I wasn't angry, only finished. Can I ask what's changed? I gave her the faintest smile. Priorities. She nodded, stood, and began making quiet calls on her headset. I left her there, professional and composed, undoing hours of planning in polite whispers. I didn't go back to the main floor. I walked the perimeter instead, the edges of the theater, where the old bricks met new scaffolding, where donors never looked. I leaned against the wall by the rear exit and listened to the sound of the night unraveling. At first, no one noticed. The transitions between speakers began to lengthen. The second camera angle stopped switching. The big screens at either end of the room dimmed and then blinked out entirely. The ambient lighting softened, then flickered, then settled into the bare bones overheads. People glanced around. A few murmured. Someone near the orchestra pit whispered, "Wasn't there supposed to be a video segment?" A server passed me with an empty tray, looking mildly confused. The illusion hadn't collapsed, it had thinned, like a costume unraveling at the seams. The room still looked beautiful, still glimmered with the aftertaste of champagne and curated goodwill, but it had lost something. The glow, the theater of it all, the polish, and no one could quite name what had gone missing. That's when I noticed Kelly scanning the crowd. She was seated again, but her posture had shifted. Straighter now, her neck craning subtly toward the tech booth, her eyes flitting to the corners of the stage. Not alarmed, just unsettled. She knew something had changed. She didn't know what yet. She hadn't seen me. Not since Emily's speech. I had melted into the background so well, I might as well have been a shadow. She had smiled for the photos, mingled with donors, whispered congratulations in Emily's ear, all without looking for me, and that was fine, because I had finally stopped looking for her, too. I remember standing there and thinking about every dinner I had come home late for. Exhausted, shoulders tight, hands cracked from labor. The home I paid for, the fridge I filled, the gas tank I refilled when Emily forgot, the Wi-Fi I upgraded, the birthdays I remembered when even her biological father didn't send a text. I remembered the quiet I had accepted in place of recognition, the quiet of being useful but not loved, needed but not honored. I had become a fixture, a power outlet in the wall, essential, invisible. The sound system cut out next. Not entirely, just the subwoofer. The music flattened, the richness gone. Voices over the microphone now sounded tinny, stripped of their warmth. A guest near the side doors frowned, looking up at the speakers. Someone approached the tech booth. I could hear the exchange from my post at the wall. "Is there a problem? We've scaled back, per the funding agreement." Scaled back? Who made that call? The sponsor. Michael. A pause. Who? Emily's stepfather. That word again. Stepfather. It sat in people's mouths like a courtesy, a title used to explain away presence. Not a father. Not real. Just a step removed. Like distance. I stood there and watched Kelly rise from her table, quietly excusing herself from conversation. She moved through the crowd with that practiced grace, not rushing but purposeful. I knew she was coming for me before she spotted me. When she did, she stopped mid-step. Her mouth opened slightly, a flash of something between recognition and disbelief. She walked toward me. "Michael," she said, her voice low, strained. "What the hell is happening?" I looked at her and tilted my head. Exactly what it looks like. Her eyes narrowed. The screens? The sound? The cameras? Did you? Yes. She stared, as if I'd spoken a different language. "Why?" she asked. No anger yet, just bewilderment, as if she still believed I could be reasoned with. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't move from the wall. I stopped supporting something where I'm treated like I don't exist. Her expression shifted, the smallest flinch, quickly masked. "You're overreacting." "It was just an omission?" I interrupted. "A mistake? Something you didn't catch in rehearsal?" She said nothing. I stepped forward, just one pace. "You sat there, Kelly. You heard her. You heard what she said. And you didn't correct it. It wasn't the time. It was exactly the time." She looked around, as if suddenly aware of how public our corner was becoming. "We can't do this here." "We're not doing anything," I said. "I already did it." And for the first time that night, she didn't look confident. She looked cautious, like someone realizing the locks had changed on a door they assumed would always open. A new voice rang out over the speaker, someone attempting to introduce the next segment, only to discover the script had changed. No lights, no video, no polish. Just a raw, unfiltered microphone in a room that was beginning to fray at the edges. The coordinator appeared beside us then, offering a polite but urgent update. "We've downgraded to base-level operations per your instruction. If you'd like me to re-engage full service, I'd need reauthorization, preferably in writing." Kelly opened her mouth, but I raised my hand. "Thank you," I said. "No changes." The coordinator nodded and walked away. Kelly stared at me like I was someone new. Not angry, not pleading, just distant. And maybe for the first time, she understood what that distance meant. "You're going to ruin her night," she said finally. I looked past her, toward the stage, where Emily was smiling for a photo with two donors. The backdrop, once lit in deep amber and royal blue, was now a dull beige curtain. "No," I said. "I'm just letting it run on what she built. Without me." And the truth of that hung between us like smoke. I didn't wait for a reply. I stepped past Kelly, out of the service corridor, and into the Charleston night warm, heavy with magnolia and exhaust. I could still hear the party murmuring behind me, but it was distant now, like it belonged to someone else. I walked 3 blocks in silence before the first message came through on my phone. It was a text from Kelly. "We'll talk later. Please don't make this worse." I didn't respond, because I already had. Kelly didn't come to me immediately. She waited. That was her instinct. Delay, control, soften the edges before confrontation. She stayed at her table long enough to be seen doing so, long enough for appearances to hold. Then she stood, smoothing her dress, rehearsing something behind her eyes. I was near the back again, half in shadow, half lit by the dull overheads that replaced the glow I'd removed. She approached with purpose now, heels sharp against the floor, her smile already gone. "What did you do?" she asked under her breath. I didn't answer right away. I watched a donor lean toward another, confusion etched into their face as the program stalled. The host fumbled with note cards. Pause stretched too long. "I stopped paying for the illusion," I said. Her jaw tightened. "You embarrassed her." "No," I replied evenly. "I stopped pretending." She stepped closer, lowering her voice. "This wasn't the time. You picked the worst possible moment." I finally looked at her then, really looked, at the woman who had learned how to ask without asking, who knew which silences I would fill for her. "There was never going to be a right moment," I said. "That's why you counted on me staying quiet." She shook her head, frustration flashing. "You're making this about you." "It was always about me," I said. "I just wasn't allowed to say it." Before she could respond, the host cleared his throat on stage. The microphone hissed. Someone in the tech booth adjusted levels that no longer existed. "And now," the host said, voice uncertain, "we were supposed to transition to our live coverage." The mic stayed open. A whisper leaked through the speakers. "Not meant for the room. Not meant for anyone but the crew." "Do we even have coverage anymore?" I thought Michael was handling that. The name traveled faster than sound. Heads turned. A ripple moved through the audience. Not loud, not dramatic, but unmistakable. The host froze, too late to pretend it hadn't happened. Another organizer stepped up, murmuring urgently. The host swallowed and tried to recover. "Apologies, ladies and gentlemen. We're experiencing a few changes this evening." "Changes?" A man near the front raised his hand, half joking. "Is this still being streamed?" We had donors watching remotely. The organizer hesitated. That hesitation was everything. "I believe," she said carefully, "there's been a change in sponsorship coverage." Eyes began to search the room. People leaned back in their seats, scanning for context. for someone to anchor the confusion. Someone asked, who was covering the technical side? No one answered at first. Then the organizer said it. Clear. Unembellished. That was funded by Michael. Silence fell in layers. Not shock, realization. Like a curtain pulled back slowly enough for everyone to understand what they were seeing. Kelly stiffened beside me. Emily, still near the stage, turned. Her smile faltered when she saw the looks directed not at her, but past her. Toward me. The man she had credited so freely was not standing. Not smiling. Not acknowledging the room. He was seated somewhere else entirely. Suddenly small. Suddenly busy with his phone. I didn't move. I felt no triumph. Only confirmation. The organizer continued, trying to regain control. Due to a change in authorization, we're proceeding with the event at base level. We appreciate your understanding. Understanding was the last thing in the room. Whispers spread. Glances lingered. The narrative, so carefully curated, had fractured. People were recalculating. The applause from earlier replayed in their minds with new weight. Emily's words echoed back, altered by context. My real father. And now everyone could see the cost of that sentence. Kelly turned to me, her voice sharp now. Say something. Fix this. There's nothing to fix, I said. This is how it looks without me. You're punishing her, she hissed. I'm refusing to be erased. Emily stepped down from the stage, confusion hardening into something closer to fear. She approached us, her voice tight. Mom? What's going on? Kelly opened her mouth, closed it, looked at me instead. I met Emily's eyes. Not angry, not pleading, just honest. I supported this event, I said, quietly, because that's how it was expected. Emily frowned. I didn't say you didn't. You said who mattered, I replied. Her face flushed. She glanced around, suddenly aware of the audience that had become a jury. This isn't the time for this. It never is, I said. That's the point. She looked past me then, searching the room for her father. He didn't meet her eyes. He was already shrinking into the crowd, weightless now that the bill had arrived. The host cleared his throat again, awkwardly ushering the program forward. The gala lurched on, stripped of momentum. Every polished moment now dulled by what everyone had just witnessed. Kelly leaned close, her voice shaking. You didn't have to do this. I did, I said, because if I didn't, nothing would ever change. She stared at me, and for the first time that night, there was no argument left in her. Only calculation. Only the dawning understanding that the ground had shifted. I took a step back. I'm leaving, I said. Emily opened her mouth, maybe to protest, maybe to apologize. I didn't wait to hear which. I walked past the tables, past the donors, past the lights I'd paid for and the shadows I now owned. No one stopped me. No one spoke. They watched. Outside, the night air was thick and forgiving. I stood on the sidewalk for a moment, listening to the muffled remains of the gala behind me. The thinned applause, the uncertain pacing. That was the sound of a system adjusting to the absence of its support. And it was only the beginning. I didn't stay until the end. By the time the gala limped into its closing speeches, I was blocks away, the soft hum of Charleston streetlights replacing the hollow murmur of polite applause. I walked without aim, past shuttered storefronts, past diners who hadn't applauded when my name was erased. I moved like someone between lives, one ending, the other not yet started. My phone buzzed once. Kelly. I didn't answer. It buzzed again. Emily this time. I powered it off. There was nothing to explain. Nothing left to salvage. I had stopped playing the role. The silence I had once accepted as payment for my sacrifices. That silent seat at every dinner, every graduation, every public moment. It had finally expired. When I got home, I went straight to the drawer in my office, the one where all the forgotten pieces lived. Contracts, receipts, tuition agreements, bank statements. I laid them out across the desk like crime scene evidence. Not because I needed to be reminded, but because I wanted to see the full shape of the lie. Kelly had always called it streamlining. Let's just keep it simple, she'd say, sliding another document toward me. You're better with this stuff anyway. And I'd sign, because saying no would have meant asking questions we didn't want answered. It would have meant disrupting the comfort. And I had been so devoted to keeping everyone comfortable. Until now. That night I began severing ties. Quietly. No speeches. No drama. I logged into portals and paused payments. Scholarship support? Terminated. Automatic transfers to Emily's university account? Cancelled. The joint credit card Kelly used for household emergencies? Locked. Every recurring transaction tied to Emily's future, the one I had bankrolled, was now silent. I didn't warn anyone. Warnings are for the salvageable. In the days that followed, the silence deepened. Kelly avoided the subject. She floated through the house like someone living inside a dream she didn't dare wake from. She tried to be gentle, tried to keep our routines intact. Coffee in the morning. Bills placed neatly on my desk. Her soft laughter during phone calls, punctuated by glances over her shoulder to see if I was listening. I wasn't. 3 days after the gala, the first email came. It was from Emily's scholarship liaison. Polite. Confused. We noticed a disruption in the payment schedule. Please advise on your intentions for the remainder of the semester. I didn't reply. For days later, Kelly finally asked. We were in the kitchen. She was chopping onions. I was pouring coffee. It was raining, the kind of steady, unremarkable rain Charleston wears like a second skin. She didn't look up when she said it. Did you pull the tuition? I didn't look up either. Yes. She stopped chopping. The blade hung in the air. Her breath hitched. Why? You know why. A long silence followed. I didn't know she'd say it like that, she offered quietly. About her real father. I didn't plan that. I nodded. But you didn't stop it either. She put down the knife. What was I supposed to do? Interrupt her? Embarrass her in front of everyone? You were supposed to look at me, I said. Even once. She turned, eyes glossy. Michael, come on. It was one line. No, I said, setting down my mug. It was 16 years. That landed. She opened her mouth, but no defense came. Only silence. She nodded slowly, as if translating the math for herself. The years, the payments, the invisible weight. 16 years of pretending I didn't need acknowledgement. 16 years of being the man behind the curtain. I left the kitchen. By the end of that week, I had completed the separation. Financially, at least, every account rerouted. Every signature retracted. I spoke to the bank about restructuring our household funds. I opened a new account. Private. Untouched. I didn't ask for a divorce. I didn't throw accusations. I didn't rage or retaliate. I just withdrew. Like blood from a wound. Emily emailed me directly on the 6th day. No greeting. Just a line. I don't understand why you're doing this. I thought you supported me. I stared at the screen for a long time before replying. I did. You just didn't notice. She didn't write again. The next week, a letter arrived. Handwritten. From her university. It confirmed her deregistration from several elective courses. Tuition failure. Immediate payment required to avoid full withdrawal. I placed it on Kelly's side of the bed. She didn't say a word that night. She turned off the light without touching me. There were moments, brief and flickering, where I felt guilt rising, like a phantom limb. But each time I almost reached for it, I reminded myself what it had cost me to stay silent for so long. Every quiet betrayal I'd absorbed under the name of patience. Every time I'd told myself that being unseen was a form of strength. It wasn't. It was slow erasure. The week after that, Emily came to the house. She didn't knock. She walked in like it was still hers. Her voice was tight, brittle. Why are you doing this to me? I made one mistake, and now you're ruining everything. I looked up from my desk. You didn't make a mistake. You told the truth. You said who your real father was. She flinched. It wasn't meant like that. It was meant exactly like that, I said. You just didn't think there'd be a cost. She looked at the floor, her voice low now. He won't help. He said he can't. He said it's not his responsibility. I said nothing. She stepped forward. I didn't mean to hurt you. I know, I said. But you did. Her eyes welled, but I didn't move. She waited for mercy, for warmth, for the version of me she had taken for granted. But he wasn't here anymore. You still love Mom, right? She asked. I nodded once. That's never been the issue. Then why are you doing this to us? I stood slowly, placing my hands on the desk. Because love without respect is servitude, I said. And I won't live like that anymore. She left without another word. That night, Kelly cried in the hallway. Not loudly, just soft sobs pressed into her palm. I didn't comfort her. I didn't tell her everything would be all right. Because it wouldn't. A month passed. Emily deferred her semester. The university wouldn't hold her spot without full payment. She moved into a smaller apartment, took on extra shifts at a bakery 2 blocks from campus. Todd, her real father, sent her a check for $200. It bounced. Kelly told me all this over dinner one night. Her voice was tired. Her fork barely moved. She's struggling, she said. I nodded. So am I. She didn't respond. We never fought. Not in the usual way. But a wall had grown between us. Tall, quiet, impenetrable. The kind that doesn't collapse in one great crash but lingers, brick by brick, until the silence it casts becomes the home itself. One night, weeks later, I found an old photo on the bookshelf. A candid sh*t of Emily when she was 13. I had just taught her how to ride a bike. She was laughing, scraped knee and all, her arms around my waist. The bike had been secondhand. I'd sanded it down, painted it lavender, added a small bell. She never remembered that detail. She always thought it came that way. I put the photo back. I've learned something since that night at the gala. Something most people don't want to admit. When you stop staying silent with your money, your time, your love, the entire system collapses on its own. You don't have to scream. You don't have to fight. You just have to stop carrying what was never yours to hold. Emily lost her semester. Kelly lost the safety net. I lost the illusion that I was ever truly part of their story. But I gained something too. Clarity. Peace not from forgiveness but from distance. They may one day understand. Or they may not. That part's no longer mine to manage. So I leave you with this. Was I wrong? Was I cruel to stop funding a fantasy that excluded me? To withdraw not just my money, but my silence? Or was this the only honest act left in a house built on quiet betrayal? Would you have endured it longer? Or would you have walked out too? You tell me.